வணக்கம் டாக்டர் சம்பத். நான் என்ன இன்ட்ரடியூஸ் பண்ணும் பொழுது டாக்டர் விஆர்எஸ் சம்பத் சொன்ன மாதிரி நானும் இப்ப அவருடைய கான்ஃபரன்ஸ், இது 8வது மாநாடு. 7 மாநாட்டிலையும் அவரோடு இருந்து அவர் துணைவாக இருந்து பணிபுரிந்திருக்கிறேன். அண்ட் இந்த மாநாட்டுக்கு என்னை அழைத்ததற்கும் முக்கிய மகாநகர்கள் போல இந்த மாநாடும் மிகவும் சிறப்பாக நடைபெறும் என்று நம்புகிறேன். இந்த குழுவில் டாக்டர் விஆர்எஸ் சம்பத்துக்கும் அவருடன் இணைந்து உதவி புரியும் மற்ற நண்பர்களுக்கும் எனது அன்பு வணக்கம். கடந்த 2 வருடங்களாக இந்த கோவிட் பேண்டமிக்கால் ஆஸ்திரேலியாவிலிருந்து என்னால் வர முடியவில்லை. வந்து நேரில் ஒருவரையும் சந்திக்க முடியாது. இருந்தாலும் அடுத்த ஆண்டு கட்டாயம் நாங்கள் அடுத்த கான்ஃபரன்ஸில் சந்திப்போம் என்று நினைக்கிறேன். எனக்கு இன்று பேச கொடுத்த தலைப்பு பிசினஸ் ஃபண்டிங் அசிஸ்டன்ஸ் டு எஸ்எம்இஸ். ஆனபடியால் எனது பேச்சை ஆங்கிலத்தில் தொடர்கிறேன். I'll try and keep my speech within the time frame. Since most of the Tamil businesses are small to medium enterprises, I will concentrate my topic of funding assistance to SMEs, especially during this COVID pandemic period. The pandemic caused the largest economic downturn to all business enterprises since 1930s. This is a phenomenal economic decline to the entire world. India and Australia are no exceptions. In the last 2 years, this has hit 20 to 30% harder to small and medium enterprises compared to large businesses. As we know, survival of the SMEs during this period was a huge challenge to the entrepreneurs, businesses, employers, and employees. To assist SMEs, governments, banks, and lending authorities came up with financial policies and assistances. I will try and explain the difficulties faced by small businesses in the Australian context. Some of the other speakers spoke about, not only in this session, even in the other sessions, mentioned about the services and also assistance available in India. So I will try and compare what is available in Australia, in the context of Australia, so that you will understand what is happening here. Small businesses play a critical role in the Australian economy. They employ nearly 5 million Australians. That's almost 25% of the population. If you can imagine that, extrapolate that to India, you can imagine how many millions and millions of people are involved in the small business industry. They account for about 1/3 of private output, and they are a key source of innovation and competition. Many small businesses use external finance from banks and other sources to manage their cash flows, invest in new equipment, and expand their operations. Like Dr. Veeramani mentioned, how the innovation and how different countries have done very well, and how India is also improving in their outlook for the newer future of the export industry. Small businesses have generally been hit harder than large businesses during the pandemic. Many businesses reported that revenue in the current year was much lower than the year prior. But small businesses have reported decline of 50% or more than large businesses. Many of the challenges small businesses face when accessing finance have been around for many years. Although I am focusing on the experience in Australia, it is worth noting that these challenges are not unique to SMEs in Australia. Small businesses, particularly less established ones, tend to be riskier than larger established firms with a track record of profitability. As a result, lenders reject a greater proportion of loan applications from smaller businesses. They also charge more to take on the additional risk associated with the loans that they provide. The terms for loans may also be more restrictive, requires collateral or personal guarantees. Indeed, around 95% of loans to SMEs are secured, compared with around 70% of large business loans. About half of small business loans are secured by residential property. Many small businesses may not be well placed to provide sufficient home equity to secure a suitable loan. Small businesses generally have few viable alternatives for external finance outside of traditional finance. Unlike large businesses, it is too costly for them to raise funds directly from capital markets. Australian small businesses have made increasing use of non-traditional sources of finance in recent years, such as balance sheet lending and marketplace lending. The Reserve Bank introduced a package of monetary policy measures at the onset of the pandemic. These have helped to reduce the cost of finance to historically low levels. The term funding facility provides low-cost term funding to banks. It includes incentives for banks to increase their lending, especially to small to medium enterprises, and they are also allocated further low-cost funds also to medium industries. The government also introduced a range of significant measures to support business cash flows and balance sheets. Policies such as JobKeeper, boosting cash flow for employers, and enhanced tax incentives for investment have reduced costs for businesses, increased household disposable income, and supported aggregate demand for and more broadly. They have preserved employment relationship between firms and employees and have helped otherwise viable businesses stay afloat when their revenues were markedly reduced by COVID-19 restrictions. These measures reduced the need for many businesses to borrow. Similarly, late last year, non-financial companies had built up cash buffers that could cover nearly 6 months worth of expenses, an increase of around 30% compared with before the pandemic. Unincorporated businesses had increased their cash buffers by 20% to a little over 2 months worth. The effects of this have started to flow through to small businesses. Measures of small business confidence have increased over the past 6 months. In February, a smaller share of businesses indicated that economic uncertainty was weighing on their investment plans than was the case in August last year. Labor market outcomes have also improved. The increases in job openings and employment growth observed since late last year have been particularly pronounced in industries that were most affected by COVID-19 restrictions. Again, these are the industries that are heavily populated with smaller businesses. Over 200,000 small and medium entrepreneurs, borrowers arranged to defer their loan payments last year. The vast majority have now resumed payments. Their share of SME loans with a deferral peaked at 13% in June. It is now around 1%. Consistent with these outcomes, modeling by large banks suggests that the risk of default for small businesses relative to large businesses did not change much in 2020. Nevertheless, business failures are expected to rise as some of the pandemic support measures are phased out. Overall, smaller businesses have suffered significantly from the economic hardship caused by the pandemic. A wide range of monetary, fiscal, and private sector measures have provided support. Indeed, many of those measures obviated the need for small businesses to take out additional debt over the past year. While business confidence has improved markedly of late, a number of businesses, particularly smaller businesses, remain reluctant to take out new loans. Some of this reflects an enormous economic outlook that, while improved, is still very uncertain. Also, access to finance for smaller businesses has been a long-standing challenge. There are a range of policies in place to help support the supply of business credit as the economic recovery proceeds. Given the importance of small businesses to the economy, government will continue to pay close attention to their access to finance and their prospects more broadly. This is the situation as far as Australia is concerned, and how the government and the banking sector is helping the SMEs during the pandemic, and also how we are going to get out of pandemic in the next few years. So I can only, I'm not sure of the details in India, how the government is assisting the small to medium industries, because that is one of the major part in Indian economy. So I hope, I'm sure Dr. Veeramani and Dr. V.R. Sampath and all the other industrialists will be aware of what's happening in India. And I will try and conclude my talk on this subject. And thank you very much for letting me a speaker at this forum. And I'll continue to meet with you, hopefully at our next 9th conference in Dubai. And thank you very much for everything, Dr. V.R. Sampath.